cocaine shark. I know it sounds like another tacky Hollywood blockbuster, but this time it's actually the real thing. US marine scientists revealed this week sharks are likely consuming cocaine due to large amounts of drugs being dumped in waters by smugglers. Environmental engineer Dr Tracy Fanara joins me now from Denver, Colorado. Doctor, thank you so much for your time. What has your research shown?
We conducted 3 studies. These are just preliminary investigations, but we know how much cocaine is dropped in these waters every month, and we know that they follow ocean currents, and this drug is very soluble. So if these packages open just a little bit, that drug will enter the water, and if the sharks are following the currents for other food sources, they can interact with them. So we did 3 different experiments. We wanted to see if the sharks might recognize cocaine bales, and that experiment, well, all the sharks chose cocaine over their typical food source, which was very shocking. It could be that they were just curious about what these boxes were, but the second one, we dropped these bales from a plane to see if that noise, see if that splashing brought the sharks over, and in fact it did. And the last one, we wanted to see behavior changes if we gave the sharks the next best thing to cocaine, which was a stimulus of a lot of shark food.
Wow. And with something like cocaine, I mean, it's very common in some circles, in others not at all. Can you explain what impact it has, A, on humans and B, on the sharks that you looked at?
Yeah, it's funny because these headlines, people just assume that sharks are going to react the same way that humans do. You get really highly active, fast-paced, high metabolism, but they do lose appetite, which is interesting because everybody kind of envisions a shark on cocaine as humans act on cocaine, but also they add in that the shark would have some kind of hunger that would go and ravage all of the humans, which is very unlikely the case. Different species act differently to different drugs. I mean, even humans act differently. Me and my best friend are completely different to a certain medication. But with species, we've seen everything from higher metabolism to slower metabolism, increased dopamine that delays reproduction and can actually delay migration patterns. So we don't know, and no studies have been done on sharks and cocaine specifically. So this is the first real preliminary study to see if we saw any strange behaviors that may or may not have been attributed to cocaine, and also just to see if sharks are interacting with these bales.
Is there the addictive side to it as well, like there is in humans?
Yeah, I mean, some studies have found that fish have been addicted to certain drugs like cocaine with the same addictive behaviors. So they were exposed to the drug, and then in a control group was not. They were put into a new tank, and they chose the outlet with that small amount, very trace amount of drug, and they went right over to it. So experiments have shown that other species of fish have shown addictive behavior to addictive drugs like cocaine.
In terms of the negative impact, I mean, anyone who's smuggling drugs illegally is hardly going to care about that. They don't care about the human lives that they're destroying. But is there a negative impact on these fish and marine life?
You're exactly right. And yes, that's why I chose to do this investigation. It's a really catchy title for an experiment, but really sheds light on a real and growing problem, and that's our chemicals in our waterways. Everything that we put into our body, on our body, all of that ends up in our natural ecosystem, and it basically comes up the food chain and back to us. But we are really impacting our wildlife that we depend on to survive by putting all these chemicals into the water. And it's not just recreational drugs. Again, it is everything and everyone.
You're co-hosting a show called Cocaine Shark, which will be broadcast during Discovery's Shark Week. Can't wait to watch that. But before I let you go, Tracy, can I just get your opinion on a local story? Earlier this week, hundreds of whales were spotted in a pod off the coast of southern Western Australia. Sadly, many of the whales beached themselves, with over 50 dying and another 45 were euthanised after 350 staff and volunteers couldn't get them back into the water. What would have caused the whales, do you think, to have formed this pod to begin with? How did we find ourselves in this awful situation?
It's so sad. And these pilot whales, they have a really interesting social structure. And the most interesting thing is that scientists actually spotted this. Drone footage saw that the whales were acting weird. They were huddling around, and then they would line up in a straight line and then huddle again. And they had a feeling that beaching was going to happen. So they were actually prepared when these whales beach themselves. But the thing is, when so many whales beach themselves, it's really a difficult thing to take care of, because first of all, they come on land, and that gravity can basically collapse their organs. In addition to that, hypothermia can set in, and they may be sick already. There's so many there. I really feel for those scientists that were, and community members that were trying to save those whales, because that must have been beyond heartbreaking.
Yeah, awful to watch and to witness, let alone to be there trying to stop it. Doctor, thank you so much for your time, and we can't wait to watch more of your work.